Joining us now is former candidate for the Republican nomination for the United States Senate and Bishop from Chesapeake, Virginia, Bishop E.W. Jackson, now a candidate for the Republican nomination for Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. Bishop, thanks for being with us today on the John Frederick Show.
Thank you for having me, John. Pleasure.
Bishop Jackson, you know, I'm going to get right to it. The criticism of your senatorial campaign in this past cycle was that you made great speeches, some of them fiery, inspiring, but didn't really raise the dollars to compete effectively, didn't have the organization. We're starting to hear that same thing now. In your race for lieutenant governor, what is going to be different than in your senatorial campaign?
Well, I don't know who you're starting to hear that from, and they don't know anything about the internal workings of my campaign. As you know, I'm the last person to announce because I was busy trying to make sure that Mitt Romney got elected and that George Allen got elected, and I made a commitment that I was going to focus my attention on that and nothing else while other people were out running. So I don't know who's saying this, but they don't understand that when you run for the United States Senate and you've never run for public office before, I think that with that background in mind, and you're not independently wealthy so that you can fund your own campaign, I think we did exceedingly well. I am very pleased with the outcome of, not pleased that I didn't win, but very pleased with the progress that we made. And I think what we built was a statewide network following of supporters who are ready to go to bat for me for lieutenant governor. So I'm very happy with where I am. I've got Steve Waters as my campaign manager. I've got the former chairman. I guess I don't think he can stay in that role, but right now former chairman of Prince Edward County as my field director. I've got a very strong team, and of course, while I didn't raise nearly enough money to compete last time, and I think for any first-time Senate candidate, it was a quixotic adventure, but I think it had benefits that I didn't at the time anticipate. I ran out of a sense of naivete that I could win, but some things I didn't anticipate came out of it. But this time, obviously, I have got a long list of supporters who gave to me last time. A lot of people who said, look, man, I want to support you. I believe in you, but I've already made a commitment to George Allen, and the next time you run, I'm with you. So I'm very excited. I think right now I'm the only candidate in this race who already has a statewide following. And so I think we're positioned very, very well to be able to win this thing, and that's, of course, what we're working at.
Bishop, one question I have is, you first ran for the United States Senate, as we were talking about, so all of your focus was on national issues and federal issues. Now you're making the jump down to Virginia. The lieutenant governor position is one of organizational leadership, also with the Senate tied right now, 2020 Democrats and Republicans. The other job is you've got to you're the power broker. You're also the tie-breaking vote many times. Is that kind of a job really going to inspire E.W. Jackson?
Well, look, John, the reality is that those issues that I talked about in the Senate campaign, particularly the issue of federalism, the issue of the limitations on the federal government's ability to encroach on the sovereignty of the states, is right at our front door now. So while there are specific state issues regarding Virginia, I think that the issue of the 10th Amendment and the right of Virginia to govern its own affairs without federal intrusion is a major issue. And I think the Senate campaign was perfect preparation for dealing with that issue. On the mechanics of lieutenant governor, I think the lieutenant governor has certain basic responsibilities, obviously presiding over the Senate. As you know, I practiced law for 15 years.
Right.
I'm very familiar with legislation. I don't have a problem with that. I tend to get along well with people, but I have a strong set of convictions from which I do not waver. So I can't wait to get in there and to begin to negotiate even with some of the Republican leadership over legislation that unfortunately has gone to the Senate in the past to die. I want to see to it that some of that legislation lives instead of dying by using the office of Lieutenant Governor as some pressure. And of course, I'm sure you know, your listeners know, Lieutenant Governor is only as strong as the support that he has. So I see the Lieutenant Governor's role not only as one of presenting a legislative package of my own, presiding over the state Senate, but I also see it as a platform for broadening the conservative coalition, strengthening the conservative message, bringing people in who have not been a part of our coalition, blacks, Hispanics, these single women who apparently voted overwhelmingly against us last time when I say against conservatives. So I see it as a role that is really perfectly suited to someone with my skill. Look, you don't go serve in the United States Marine Corps. You're not married for 42 years, raise 3 children, run your own business without there being more to you than a speech.
Okay, that's a very compelling answer. Bishop Jackson with us here on the John Frederick Show, Common Sense for the Commonwealth, Common Sense News Time 721. E.W. Jackson is a candidate for the Republican nomination for Lieutenant Governor. That'll be decided in a convention in May. Bishop Jackson, let's get to Obamacare, Virginia, and setting up exchanges. Governor McDonnell right now is changing his position. At first he said, well, why don't we see if these exchanges can work? Now he's saying, I'm not sure that these make sense for us. Let's let the Fed step in. If in your candidacy for lieutenant governor, what do you think Virginia's position should be on the implementation of Obamacare?
Well, I think that we should be categorically, unequivocally, and unswervingly opposed to the setting up of exchanges. I think if the federal government, as they have rammed this thing down the throats of the American people, has rammed it down the throats of the people of Virginia, let them come in and pay to set up these exchanges. Because frankly, in my view, this fight is not over by a long shot. I think we still very much got a right to challenge this legislation on the basis of its constitutionality in terms of its encroachment on state sovereignty, its violation of the 10th Amendment. I think that the fight ought to continue, whether even though the court has said that, well, they have a right to do it because of the taxing authority. I think it raises a lot more questions, and I think we ought to just continue to fight it step by step. I refuse to give up on the idea that we can get rid of this thing. I know the election outcome would suggest that we're stuck with it. I don't think we are. I think, James Madison in Federalist Paper 53 talked about the importance of state resistance to federal encroachment, that the states needed to band together, that they needed to pass legislation, that their chief executive needed to stand up. He said, I don't know what sort of madness would grip the federal government to make them put a state in a position to have to do that, but if they did, then it would be the responsibility of the states to do it. And so I am in favor of Virginia fighting every step of the way.
Now, Bishop Jackson Steve Ray here, the Director of Editorial Content. It's 7:24 now on the John Frederick Show. So you feel the same way when it comes to all federal mandates and the principle of federalism giving us mandates that the states are financially responsible for, but that the federal government is forcing us to implement?
As a general principle, absolutely. I know that there's some things that would be required to unravel in order for that principle to be lived out in fullness, but I certainly think, look, I see Virginia as a line in the sand. Virginia is the place where the founding documents were created. It's the place that laid the foundations for this country. I think the whole country is going to be looking to Virginia in 2013 for a number of things, to see how we stand on the constitutionality of Obama's actions in general, of Obamacare specifically, the EPA's encroachment on the property rights of our people. I think they're going to be looking to see whether conservatives in Virginia broaden our base, begin to reach out beyond where we are often caricatured as being, which is and this is the liberals' caricature. I don't believe it's true, but it's clear that we've got to get the message out to these other communities that we have a message that we think is for them, that will benefit them, that will help them. And I think the country is going to be looking to see does Virginia begin to take that step. I think my candidacy represents the diversity of the Republican Party and the conservative movement. So yeah, I think that Virginia is the place where the battleground is now going to be confronted between state power and federal power. And I think this is the place where the balance can begin to be restored, because in my view, based on what the Founding Fathers had in mind, we are way out of balance, and the federal government has gone far beyond its constitutional restrictions.
Now, before I hand you back to John, one of the questions we've asked each of the lieutenant governor candidates in our one-on-one forums has to do with energy independence and, of course, oil, coal, and gas resources right offshore here of the coast of the Commonwealth. What is your position on those essential industries?
Well, look, people of Southwest Virginia are hurting, and they're hurting badly. This administration, just as Obama promised he would, is trying to shut down coal. Another reason why I can't explain the outcome of the election without believing that there had to be some voter fraud involved as well, because if Obama manages to shut down the coal industry, he will jack up energy and electric prices for the average American beyond anything. I mean, they could double. He has said that he thought that would be a healthy thing. He wants to kill the coal industry. We've got to fight him. We can't allow the EPA to do that. We got to fight him in the courts. We got to fight him with legislation, and we got to fight him with activism. The same thing with oil. You know, I've heard estimates of anywhere from 10,000 to 36,000 jobs if you consider the jobs that could be created as a result of people that we'd hire for offshore drilling, because, of course, there's a multiplier effect. When you start employing people, they start spending, and that creates more jobs. But I've heard estimates as high as 36,000 jobs that we've been deprived because this administration removed what we thought was going to be a permit to drill offshore. So our gas, we don't have any indication whatsoever that fracking is creating any problems environmentally. Look, I think we ought to be environmentally responsible. I don't think we ought to be environmentally irrational or obsessive. There's a cost-benefit analysis that we have to consider whenever we're looking at getting the energy out of the ground. But we've got to remember that our nation has the highest standard of living of any nation in the world. Well, or at least we used to. Some argue that there's a few places that have higher, but still one of the highest standards of living anywhere in the world. And energy is what's driven that. And without that, we are in descent, not in ascent. So, I believe that here again, the lieutenant governor. I don't want to overstate the level of power that the lieutenant governor has, because constitutionally, the lieutenant governor has limited power.
I think we got it. You mentioned that there was, in your view, voter fraud in Virginia. President Obama carried the state by about 180,000 votes. Do you believe that there was over 180,000 instances of voter fraud in Virginia?
I don't know whether over 180,000, but I'm clear in my mind that there was voter fraud, and there shouldn't be any voter fraud in American elections.
Do you have any evidence of that?
Anecdotal evidence, not any study, but anecdotal evidence, absolutely.
E.W. Jackson, candidate for the lieutenant governorship on the Republican side. Jackson for lieutenant for LTGovVA.org.